Hey everybody, Eric Chessen, founder of Autism Fitness, leading the movement for movement. And if you are ready, and you are ready to become an Autism Fitness certified pro, whether you are a professional, a parent, or a family member working with, caring for the autism and neuroadaptive population, you can become an Autism Fitness certified pro. The link to learn more is in the bio. And in this Tuesday training, of course, it's Tuesday training because I put it out on Tuesdays, but you can watch it whenever you so choose. We're going to be talking about programming from the perspective of how we pair different exercises together. In the Autism Fitness Level 1 certification, you get plenty more information on how to structure your programs, what exercises work well together, what exercises to use, what exercises to avoid, how to progress and modify the exercises, all of the most essential components of program design. So we're going to look at, in the last couple of videos, we spoke about programming 101, which is program design. Now we're looking at how to put each exercise together within the phase. So right now we're going to look at one of my athletes doing uh, strength phase. So two of the exercises that we often pair, we can pair things two different ways when we're working with a superset. And a superset are two different exercises that are performed back and forth between each other with either a rest between the exercises or a rest after both exercises, depending on the intensity level of the exercise, meaning how challenging it is for the athlete. We might want to give them, or they might want to take a little extra rest. We can talk about rest periods in another video. Most of the time, our athletes, because of where they're starting out, need a rest more for their adaptive performance or being able to reset themselves than they really do from the physical exertion. And that's because in the strength phase, most often, our autism and neuroadaptive athletes need a modification or a simpler version of the exercise that we're giving to them. In this case, for this athlete, you're going to see a more advanced overhead press with sandbells. This particular athlete is doing overhead presses with an 8 pound, with a pair of 8 pound sandbells. But then we have a modified squat where he's squatting to an elevated platform. Overall, it is not going to be so intense that he's going to need 2 or 3 minutes of recovery time physically. However, from an adaptive or behavioral standpoint, he may need that chill out time to relax and to get refocused. So that's something that we need to be cognizant of. So we take these two exercises. We have an overhead press, which is predominantly an upper body exercise. So we see the athlete setting up, talking a little bit, definitely a talker here, and then performing mostly independently with a little bit of prompting, a really good set of overhead presses. There's a little bit of extra reach at the top of that press. You can see he has some hypermobile shoulders here, but it's not at the point where that hypermobility is creating an issue or a problem here. So he is, as I mentioned, predominantly independent with this press here. So it looks really good. And there's a point at which not many of our athletes are at yet. So it's really cool when we can step back. You can see how much room there is between myself and the athlete right now. And that's by coaching design. I really want to be able to step back and enable the athlete to perform the exercise by themselves when and where it is possible. So after he completes this set, you can see really cool. These are little things, but they are little things that are big things. After that set, he puts the sandbells down himself. I don't need to take the sandbells. He can put them down. And then he's going to seek out a rest on the bench, which is fine for a couple seconds. So he needs that time to process and he needs that time to reset himself. And after he's done with his mini break here, because this is not going to be a full 2 minute break, and I can fast forward this a little bit, he's going to start with his squats now. All right, so he's going to set up, and here's the thing about setting up for these squats. He is independent in the setup. So he doesn't need a physical prompt or a guided prompt, things that we can do with a band. However, he still needs this elevated surface in order to maintain the integrity of the movement. And you can see there's a little lag time here, which is common for our ASD athletes. It's common that there's a little extra time taken to set up for the exercise. Now he's ready to go. So you can see in the form, we're still working on this. So even with that elevated platform, you still see a little forward movement in the first, or folding in the first 2 or 3 reps, and then he will dial it in and we get a much better squat as the reps go on. And one thing we want to prepare for is having our athletes perform the exercise at their current level of ability. Now, in this case, I would also say that I would modify this exercise further and elevate the platform, because in this particular set, we're seeing a lot of forward fold. I'll come back to this, right? And this is the power of video. We can always go back and look. So you see, he's initiating the squat with his lower back, which is definitely something that we don't want to happen consistently with our athletes. So when we see this for a few repetitions, that means that we're going to have to start modifying it and elevate that platform, because having an athlete do this for 5 or 6 sets is not going to be anywhere near ideal. So at the end of this set, what I'm going to do here is modify the exercise, elevate that platform so he can squat safely and effectively. So things to look out for. When we're talking about the superset again, what we're doing is we're creating a situation, or we're creating a program variable in which we're doing either an upper body and a lower body exercise, or a push and a pull exercise. Again, breaks being variables that we're going to either set in ourselves, or the athlete gets a choice of what they want to do. So that's a little bit more on the programming side, what exercises we would put together during the strength phase. And that's one example. And also what happens when we need to modify an exercise as well. So in this case, of course, the athlete's presses were independent. And that's why we can't give a general a general overview, or a general statement about where an athlete is. Oh, they're more advanced. Well, yeah, with some exercises, but others, they still need a modification. And this is a perfect example of that. It's also a great example of a situation in which last week the athlete was able to perform the squats at that level of height on the bench, and we have to raise that now because we're seeing that forward folding. So you get a little extra today with this edition of Tuesday training, programming consideration or programming variables, and then training considerations when we need to modify or simplify an exercise, because that is not going to fix itself. We need to put something in the environment or in the situation so that that squat maintains integrity